Hello, everyone, and welcome to the March presentation of the Friends of History First Wednesday Lecture Series. I'm Ben Woodbury with the Friends of History, here to welcome you. As a reminder, before we start, all recent, past, and future First Wednesday online lectures are available on our Friends of History webpage, friendsofhistorynm.org. Just click on the lecture series link at the top of the homepage. Our monthly lectures are being provided free of charge by the Friends of History with the support of the New Mexico History Museum. We do, however, accept and encourage donations. These funds will directly go to support the lecture series and, more importantly, all History Museum programs and exhibits. Should you wish to make a donation, just go to our website and click on the Donate button at the top of the page. Today, we are happy to welcome Scott Andrews, the founder of the Wisdom Archive. Scott first came to Santa Fe in 1978 as a student at the Anthropology Film Center. It was the second year of a master's degree in Visual Anthropology, which launched him on a career producing cross-cultural documentaries for public television around the world. After gaining a PhD in education at Stanford, he went on to win an Emmy for his work in Afghanistan, Last Images of War, and a Dupont Silver Baton for a three-part Frontline series about integration at Berkeley, California's high school, School of Colors. He returned to live in Santa Fe in 2013 and began filming with local traditional masters for the Wisdom Archive. Today, after providing an introduction on the aims of the Wisdom Archive, Scott will share three brief selections from the video collection. Following the presentation, Scott will answer any questions you may have. Your questions and comments can be posted at any time in the YouTube chat room, both during and after the presentation. So let us now welcome Scott Andrews.
Good afternoon. My name is Scott Andrews, and I'm the founder of the Wisdom Archive, which is a 501c3 that was established here in Santa Fe in 2014. Our purpose is to make a video archive, a visual archive of disappearing traditional knowledge. And as we're based in Santa Fe, most of our work is in northern New Mexico. So right now, the archive has 51 films. 41 are about disappearing traditional life of northern New Mexico. 10 are from other countries, from traditional societies in other countries. And the whole idea kind of came about because there's a focus right now on disappearing biodiversity. And the loss of, in our minds, the loss of cultural diversity is equally tragic and equally important to be noted and paid some attention to. And we're paying attention to it by trying to find elders who may be the last who know their particular knowledge, traditional knowledge, and especially knowledge which is practical knowledge. The great thing about film as a recording medium is you can show how to do something. So our focus is not on oral history or oral traditions. It's really on things that people know how to do, that they can show how to do, that they're elders, but they can still do it. They are still doing it. They are still practicing their art or their craft. And so those are the people we look for. And we try and find people who, if possible, have younger people in their family or their community who they are teaching their craft to. And we try and include that in the film because we feel that the transfer of culture is super important. And that's obviously the idea of the Wisdom Archive. Our subtitle is the seed bank of traditional culture. The idea being that, 50, 100, 75 years down the road, when somebody from one of these cultures or from an entirely different culture wants to learn how to, let's say, traditionally dye wool, they can watch Rita Padilla-Hoffman's film on the Wisdom Archive and learn how to do that, see how to do it without having that lost when that person passes. And, that's the sad part and the important part is to do as many of these as possible, as soon as possible, because here in northern New Mexico, like in much of the world, these traditional elders are passing, especially in the time of COVID. We've lost so much knowledge, so much cultural knowledge with these elders who have passed with COVID. And they have been unable, in many cases, to leave a record of that. I think the local Native American Pueblo people are very good with oral tradition and have a vibrant society. So perhaps it's less necessary for people who still have a vibrant culture with oral traditions and passing down of traditional knowledge. But many cultures don't have that that's still intact. And so to record this now and put it in an archive where it's universally accessible, which is one of the great things about YouTube. YouTube, number one, it's free. It's accessible anywhere in the world. And, one of the things we're also trying to do is liberate some films and footage from archives where it is not visible. There's a lot of great old material which is around, but people can't see it because it's often held in state archives or museum archives, or it's in a format which is not digitized. And so it's difficult for people to see, but it represents a body of knowledge which is locked away. And to the degree that we can raise funding to liberate that, that's another thing that we try and do. Besides film with elders who are still alive, is find films or footage from elders who are no longer with us and figure out a way to make that visible and accessible via YouTube. So as I was saying, to this date, most of our work has been in northern New Mexico. There's two other local filmmakers, Chris Beaver, who is a longtime documentarian, and Lucia Duncan. And both of them have pieces. The work that is visible at the moment, besides on the Wisdom Archive, is there is an ongoing exhibit at the Museum of International Folk Art that was curated by Nicolas Chavez and Cipriano Vigil, called Música Buena. And there are 13 video pieces in that exhibit. And those were all produced either by myself or by Chris or by Lucia for the exhibit. And those are mostly about traditional forms of music in New Mexico, some of which we had already recorded, and some which were recorded specifically for the exhibit. So a lot of the music that we use to go with other films also on the Wisdom Archive is from traditional sources, and we really have a big debt to Antonia, Apodaca, Cipriano Vigil, and then the local group who is helping keep these musical traditions alive, Lone Pinon, which is run by or led by Jordan Wax, an incredible musician here in Santa Fe. So we really want to thank them for their generosity with their music, and also thank all the people in all our films for their generosity, because many times they're sharing knowledge which could be hoarded. People could say, I learned this from my grandmother and I don't want to share it. But these people are being very generous. And the film that has been seen the most is actually Antonio Manzanares' mother, Natividad. So that's Antonio back there. That's the film called The Last Shepherds. Antonio and Mali Manzanares have one of the last big flocks of sheep up in Tierra Maria. And his mom very graciously agreed to demonstrate and give her recipe for bizcochitos, which has been passed down for generations and now has about 90,000 views. And so that's the other thing I think is important to say. Nobody gets paid to be in our films. They're all donating their time, their energy, and their knowledge. And so we're really appreciative of that. And so we have these 41 films. They fall into kind of different categories. One is about traditional farming in New Mexico. And there's 2 year in the life films that we did. One is The Last Shepherds, where we follow a year in the life of a traditional sheep farming operation up in Tierra Maria. And then there is La Huerta de Don Bustos, which is about Don Bustos, who is a farmer in Santa Cruz, who still lives and farms the land that's been in his family for 400 years and tends the acequias and knows when to plant based upon knowledge that goes back hundreds of years. And then we also have a rancher in Truchas, Eugenio Lopez, who's also a santero. And we have a short piece on him. So those are kind of about traditional farming. And then we have traditional music. Again, the kind of the centerpiece of that is a piece that we did with Antonia Apodaca and Cipriano Vigil. They knew each other for a long time. Antonia was maybe half a generation or a generation older than Cipriano. So they knew each other. They had never played together. We got them together and they spend 40 minutes teaching each other songs and having a ball. So it's a wonderful piece. And Antonia Apodaca is no longer with us. So we're so thankful that we have that to share now. And then there's also music from L'Opinion. And there's a piece on Cipriano about his life and his work teaching traditional music to school children in New Mexico. And then we have the Música Buena exhibit, which I mentioned earlier at the Museum of International Folk Art. And that includes three very important pieces called entregas, very important in the history of Spanish colonial society in northern New Mexico. And in the absence of priests in the early history of this area, often the local musician would sing these entregas as a way of formalizing relationships in the eyes of the village before the priest could come. So it might be a marriage. So one of the entregas is the entrega de los novios. Another entrega is the entrega de bautismo, which is the baptism. And the whole purpose of that was the priest might only come once a year. And prior to the priest coming, if a child died and had not been baptized, people feared that it might go to hell. So the whole purpose of having this unofficial baptism via music was to save that child. And then the third one is the Entrega del Defunto, which is an alabado that would be sung by the penitente brothers of a morada at a funeral. And that was very kindly performed by Charlie Carrillo, who is the hermano mayor of the morada in Abiquiu. And then we also have in there, we have one of the pieces that we created from footage that was created by the Lujan family in Chamayo back in the 70s, was the last place where the passion play of Moros and Cristianos was performed. So we had some old Super 8 footage and some audio, and we put together a film based on that footage of something that disappeared in the 70s. There's also a film about let me see, where are we? Excuse me. Well, there's a lot of films. So Los Pastores. So Los Pastores was last performed in 1995 in Trampas, and it was performed by the work of Arsenio Cordova and Larry Torres. And it was filmed at that time, and it's a film that is in circulation but rarely seen. So for the exhibit, we also cut that down and made that accessible. Then we have a whole series on traditional food, cooking, and herbs of New Mexico. And I already mentioned the one about bizcochitos with Natividad Manzanares. There's also several films with Camila Trujillo, who shows how to collect herbs. She's a herbera, a traditional herbera, how to collect herbs in the fall, in the spring, and then how to make an herbal muscle balm with those. And she also shares her passed down recipes from her grandmother and her great-grandmother for red chili sauce, frijoles, and atole. And she and Don Bustos of La Huerta de Don Bustos also show how to make ristras, which is also something which is passing from the general knowledge, how to actually take the chilies and tie them. And then there's a piece that we did at Las Golondrinas called La Truchas Mill. It's the last operating Spanish colonial flour mill in New Mexico that operates once a year. So we made a short film showing how that works. And then we have a whole section on traditional art of New Mexico. And so there's a piece with Rita Padilla Hoffman, who's a well-known weaver. And she shows how to dye, spin, card wool from churro and mostly from churro sheep, which are the traditional sheep, which are brought here by the Spanish. And then there's a piece, Recuerdo by Chris Beaver, which is about Nicolas Herrera, who's a well-known santero in El Rito. And then the pieces that started all are my neighbor across the street was Monica Sosaya, who was widely known as kind of the grand dame of Spanish market. And she was a colcha artist and also a santera who painted matachinas on hide. So there's two films with Monica. And then two recently finished films. There's one with Diana Lujan and her daughter Lenice and her granddaughter Hannah, 3 generations doing straw applique. And they're artists who present at the Spanish market every year. And then there's a piece with Juanito Jimenez, who's a longtime Spanish market artist, santero. And he shows how to make natural pigment paints by going out to Abiquiu and collecting the pigments and how to mix them. So there's a wide range of subjects, and we still have many people to film with. If there's any, our limitations are that there aren't many of us. We don't have a lot of funding, and also the limitations are that many of these people are aging and may pass before we have a chance to work with them. So one of the things we'd really like to do is train some young filmmakers to continue and to film in their own traditional communities. So this is all as a way of introducing the Wisdom Archive, and to give you an introduction of what it actually looks like, I'd like to introduce a compilation piece we did, which is called 3 Mornings in New Mexico, which includes the beginnings of 3 films: The Last Shepherds, La Huerta de Don Bustos, and Los Comanches de la Serna. Please enjoy.
Goodness, what a beautiful girl. There you go. Right on. A ver, una gotita aquí. There you go, otra gotita aquí. There. Espantao is a dance honoring the combatants. The reason its name is Espantao is because the dancers are to act like if they're scared of each other. Tino and Minnie, it's a girl and a guy. When they dance that dance, they dance from the heart. Oh, and that's a beautiful performance that those kids do. Some of our dancers, they come from distant places. Some come from California, some come from Las Cruces, Albuquerque, from all over, that have started when they were young, and it has been part of their life, so they set aside that day to be here. It's an empty day without a drum beat in our valley. It's so warming on New Year's Day, even though it may be snowing or it may be very cold outside. But the drums, in my opinion, they warm up the hearts of many people in our community. And I am one of those recipients, and I have been since I was a child. So it just resonates beautiful memories of when I was a kid. And that's what we do on New Year's Day.
start to grind up some of this corn. Yeah, this is the old grinder we've been using for years. This is Camila's grandpa, kind of. Grandma's. Yeah, we're still using it. It still works really, really well. That was a red chili that I grinded up before, so we use a grinder for everything. The first thing you do is harvest the blue corn, and we roast it on the oven. You get that really nice smoky flavor. Hey, good morning, Emilio. What's happening, mijito? Huh? You doing good? Yeah? Good.
What's nice is you got the chili mixed.
I know, it's going to be a killer blend, man. It's
Gonna be really, really nice. It's a pretty color.
It's nice to get started like this. And I remember Grandpa Bustos, and he'd get up, he'd have a little fire going. Grandma had a tea, a little atole for him. Yeah, this is my favorite part of the day.
Salud.
Salud. Thanks, sweetie. Thanks. Dawn's special blend.
Ooh, that's hot.
Came out perfect.
Flame throwing atole.
No, man, it's just right. We'll see you guys. No, bye, Emilio.
Take care.
Okay.
Ya viene amaneciendo. Yo sigo trabajando para mantener a lo que quiero tanto.
Hey, tell you, man, we're walking the same steps our ancestors walked 400 years ago, you know. The curves, the same depth, everything's the same. It is so freaking awesome, huh? Same land produces food for 400 years, sustained our family and families in the community. It's like, this is the just and right thing people should be doing. Not everybody's lifestyle, but people that choose it should be allowed to live it to its fullest. No, this is cool. That's a piece of land that my ancestors farmed, huh? I can imagine them just doing the same thing you and I are doing. The same thing. That is so freaking cool, huh?
Del corral viene pegando viene de asistir sus animales cansados, pero no lo muestra porque ese es su trabajo, es lo que más le vale, es lo que más este es el nuevo mexicano que se encuentra por mi tierra y también es un anciano porque el joven anda fuera, porque el joven anda fuera.
If something happens to either you or I, independent of what's going to happen if we both, nothing happens to us and we just get older, it'd be pretty tough for just one person to take it on.
I ask that question a lot.
What's going to happen?
Oh,
what
yeah,
are we going to do?
Molly asks that question all the time. Well,
Wonder
what's
does
going
it-
on? What's going on?
He doesn't
You don't
like
have
to
a
hear.
plan. You don't have a plan.
He doesn't like to hear it.
And I don't. I don't like to hear it. Just go along. The plan is is developing itself in a sense with us along with it.
In 1982, I think might have been the first year that we took him out to the forest. 'Cause that was when our oldest son I was expecting him. And we've been doing it, I guess, for about 32 years is how long we've been coming back and forth. It's just who I am. Yeah, even when the weather's bad and even when it's bad, it's good.
That's right.
It brings back a lot of memories of what we used to do, bringing the cattle down and gathering in the fall.
I have a book called Tough by Nature. It's written by some lady that spent 19 years interviewing women, ranch women, and drawing sketches and paintings of them, and just a short interview. And there's one lady that said, if there's a woman that can pretty much do everything, it's because she had a dad that said, you can do whatever. And he didn't say, you're a girl, you can't do this. And that's us.
This day is a stressful one because of all the traffic and dealing with the public. And I don't know if you saw how many cars we had lined up behind us there on the highway, but people enjoy seeing it because they used to see it a long time ago, and then we're the only ones that they see now. So we're the last of the Mohicans. Ya nomás nos acabamos nosotros y se acabó, parece. You never know. Somebody will decide they want to do it. I hope. And if they don't, pues se acaba. Eso es todo. Oh, it makes me feel honored and proud in many ways, but it also makes me sad that it's going to be gone. ¿Qué más te puedo decir?
So Scott, thank you very much for this introduction to the Wisdom Archive and for participating here in our lecture series. The archive is truly a unique and informative resource, and I am glad you have been able to share it with our audience. Your video clips have provided us with a rich sampling of the work you and your team have done for the archive. I'd like to shortly open it up for a Q&A. For our audience, a reminder that you can type in any questions and comments on the lecture you may have into the chat room on the YouTube page from where you're viewing this presentation. As we await for any questions or comments, so let me start with one or two to get things rolling. Scott, how did you happen to become interested in this particular project in order to document and preserve Hispanic traditional skills and lifeways in New Mexico?
Well, in 1978, when I went to film school in Santa Fe at the Anthropology Film Center, that's when I first got the idea, and I thought, wow, there's so much incredible traditional culture that's still happening here in northern New Mexico. And the issue at that time is that we were making films in 16 millimeter, and it was expensive. 12 minutes of film with the sound and everything is about $1,000. And so if you wanted to do a film like The Last Shepherds, there's probably about 1,000 hours of work and about 80 hours of footage that went into that film, and filming over many times, it would have been impossible to do. It was so hard to get funding, and especially that amount of funding, that as a result, it was impossible to do any filming at that time with elders or traditional knowledge bearers. And so when I returned in 2013, obviously cameras now are smaller. Unfortunately, there's a lot fewer people left who are bearers of this knowledge, but it seemed like, no time like the present. So that's when we started.
That's wonderful. We have a question from the chats. How do you decide what specific topics to focus on?
Well, it needs to be generally an elder. It needs to be someone who has knowledge that they're still able to show, to actually show how to do it, because we're focusing on practical knowledge. Frankly, it needs to be someone who we like, and they like us, so we get along, and because often it means spending quite a bit of time together, and mutual respect is a big part of that. I think another part that's changed over time is, obviously, I'm an outsider for much of this, and so there's been questions of trust. And I think there's enough films in the archive now that people can see that our approach is we don't put narration on top of anything. We don't interpret anything. We let people speak for themselves. And the whole idea is to focus on the master and not on ourselves or on the film. We try and be as transparent as we can, and preserve as much as we can of what these people are still doing.
I was particularly struck by your efforts to identify and preserve film records which document these Hispanic practices, and many of which I sense came out of families just for doing, recording these things for their own interest. Can you expand on how that part of the project has been going, and any particular projects that will be coming down the pipe relating to this?
Well, I'm hoping to find some more footage or old films that exist in archives, in New Mexico archives. One of the great things to do, one of the reasons I'm very thankful to the museum and yourself for doing this lecture, it gives us a way to reach out to people in the community. And if you happen to have footage of an elder in your family showing how to do something, that's the kind of stuff that we want to find. Funding is always difficult to find to put these films together. One of our big focuses is trying to find new filmmakers from traditional communities so that they can film in their own communities, not as outsiders as we are, but as insiders. And the issue there really is that, as you know, in New Mexico, most of the focus is on the feature film industry. That's where the money is. That's where you can get a job and actually get paid. And we totally understand that documentary, it's a hard way to make a living. So we want to start a kind of a competitive film program where people apply to get funded to make a film with an elder in their community, or it could be making a film with footage that they have. Where we would have a stipend, a payment of, let's say, $2,500, and then we would have one of the people in our group, ideally probably Chris or Lucia, who both have extensive experience teaching in university, act as mentors for them to help them realize a really good film about their elder. So that's something we're trying to raise funding for and to make competitive, so that whatever comes out of it are films either that we can use, or as I was saying earlier, if it is, sometimes there's a line between traditional knowledge and the sacred. And this is very clear in Native American communities. And if there's some knowledge that's sacred, but the people who hold it are passing, we'd be happy also to train people from that community to film with that elder for a film just to be used in their community, not to be put on the Wisdom Archive and out on YouTube.
And if folks are interested in reaching out to you, I assume the best way is to contact you via the webpage and the.
Yeah, Yeah, so we have a webpage, thewisdomarchive.com, and then we have the YouTube channel, which is called The Wisdom Archive, or it's Scott at thewisdomarchive.com. If you know an elder who you think is deserving of a film, and especially if you have the wherewithal to sponsor the making of a film about that person, we'd love to hear about you, or to sponsor a young filmmaker in the mentorship program. That would also be wonderful. So both of those, you can also contact me through thewisdomarchive.com.
Wonderful. You mentioned in your talk, you referred to the support that you all provided to the Folk Art Museum in developing its ongoing exhibit on Music Buena, Hispanic music in New Mexico. Can you share any other projects ongoing or planned that you're working on with the archive and for it?
Well, mostly we're trying. Up to this point, most of our funding we've been self-funded. We've had a few donors in the community as we're a 501c3. And so our limitations are that we're not very many people. We don't have much money, and the elders are passing and we're getting older. So we don't have as much time or energy as we might like to film with as many deserving people as there are. So again, that brings me back to the whole reason for trying to train younger filmmakers, is so we have more bandwidth to cover more people and to have that done as soon as possible, because people passing so quickly, especially during COVID. So there's another film which I'm hoping to start soon, which is about a traditional tin worker who also works with a lot of young children and trains them. And that's always a big part of what we try and do is film with people who are training young people behind them so that they're leaving a legacy behind them. And that's kind of what the Wisdom Archive is. It's also designed to be a legacy for people.
We have a comment from one of our participants. He says, I assume you know And Now Miguel, which is now on the YouTube.
Yeah, I do know about that film. I've seen it. It's a great movie. In some ways, maybe it would fit on the Wisdom Archive, except that it was made with you kind of see it at the end of the film, kind of the express intent of getting people in the traditional Hispanic community to volunteer to fight. This was during and before the Second World War. And that's somewhat problematic to me. There is some great traditional stuff in that, but the overall funding of it and the direction that the film goes, I have a problem with. If we could take that film and take out the part which focuses on the traditional knowledge, that would be great. That would be a great project.
So I think that pretty much concludes our questions. Scott, do you have any last comments before we close things up?
Mostly just to thank you and Billy Garrett, the director of the museum, and for the opportunity to come on and talk to people, show a little bit of our work, and to let the people who were actually watching this now or who are going to watch it later on YouTube, for whatever reason with Zoom and everything else, the actual quality of our films is somewhat higher than the way it appeared. It's not jerky and it's not fuzzy. So if you go to the website or you go to our YouTube channel, I think you'll be pretty pleased with the quality of the film. So please watch the films, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and tell as many of your friends as possible. And if any of you happen to know or are a writer, or you happen to know someone with local media, we've been doing this for 7 years, and we have not had a single article done about us or any of the films or any of the people in the films. That would be nice. It would be nice for people to know what we're doing and to get more people to watch.
Indeed it will, and hopefully sharing of this video will help in some small part. Again, and Scott, I want to thank you again, of course, for discussing the Wisdom Archive with us, for sharing its goals and highlighting the work you and your team have done to date and have planned for the future. We wish you every success.
Thanks, Ben.
As a reminder to our audience, don't forget to check Scott's webpage, thewisdomarchive.com. In closing, a reminder to everyone that you can rewatch this and other presentations of the Friends of History First Wednesday Lecture Series on our webpage, friendsofhistorynm.org. If you wish to learn more about upcoming lectures or to learn more about the Friends of History, we urge you to join our mailing list if you have not already done so, either via our webpage or by emailing us at nmhmfriendsofhistory@gmail.com. As well, if we certainly encourage you to make a donation, which helps both us, the Friends of History, for this series, and other museum programs at the History Museum. We look forward to seeing you all again in the months ahead as we continue the First Wednesday Lecture Series. Goodbye for now.